Second it.
Okay. The motion has been made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Mr. Rouse to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please, I think we can raise our hands. Make sure I can see that. Okay. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So we have two pages of minutes to approve, and they were in our packets here. The first one is March the 24th, 2020, and the next one is April the 14th, 2020 minutes from our board meetings. I entertain a motion from the board to approve those minutes as you see fit. If you'd like to take one at a time or take them both together, that is your decision.
Madam Chair, I would like to make the motion to approve both minutes for tonight, both the March 24th and the April 14th.
That motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
I second.
The motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Mr. Rouse to approve the minutes of our board meetings for April the 14th, 2020 and April 24th. That wouldn't be the 24th. That's going to be
April 14th.
that's going to be April 4th and March 24th. March 24th and April
14th.
14th. Okay. Yeah, there it is, the 24th. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes for March the 24th and April 14th. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. And I don't see Ms. Stokes. I see Mr. Harris. Ms. Blackshear, do you approve? I mean, you vote yes. And Mr. Okay, and Mr. Rouse?
If we can minimize the agenda, please.
Yes, I approve.
And Ms. Stokes, you approve the minutes of those meetings? Did she say yes? Okay. All right. Ms. Stokes said yes by raising her hand. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And at this time, we're going to ask Ms. Blackshear if she will review our ethics, our board ethics with us, please.
Unmute, Ms. Blackshear.
Ms. Blackshear, turn your microphone on, please.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm trying. Now I got it. It worked that time. Sorry about that. In accordance with regulations set forth by the Georgia Ethics Commission, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest and interest of such conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest? Seeing none, Madam Chair, we will proceed with our agenda.
Thank you for that, Ms. Blackshear. And Mr. Dixon, do you have any superintendent's comments this evening?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to bring you up to date. We planned a planning meeting, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and fellow board members. I want to say, first of all, thank you for what you do serving the boys and girls of Twiggs County during this trying time of COVID-19. It's a day-by-day event. Things can change drastically. First of all, I want to say thank you to those staff members that are serving our boys and girls with meals each Monday. We're still serving a large number And just to let you know, even when we miss someone, we're still receiving those calls that, hey, I got missed today. And we're still going back out to serve our families and our stakeholders. So that is still going really well. And we go out on Mondays and we serve for the week. And so we're very appreciative to our staff members that are doing that. So I want to say a very special thank you to Ms. Sandra Stanley, to our transportation department, and to our custodial department, as well as our paraprofessionals. A very special thank you to Mr. Jonathan King and to Mr. Jarvis Wilcher and to some of our other certified staff who just every week they come up and go out with those who are working every Monday to do that. And it's just the type of people that we have working for us that makes the world go round. So I'm very appreciative to those for what they are doing with that. Also in that vein, Mayor Charles Williams and our new executive director for Family Connections, they're doing a fine job with every opportunity that they have to feed the community. They will be feeding the community again on May the 8th, I believe that is. And they will be in the parking lot of the Twiggs County Middle High School complex. So they will be, of course, observing all of the COVID-19 cautionary procedures. But they will have food bank there in the parking lot of our Twiggs County Middle High School complex. Also, Commissioner Lonnie Ford will also be doing a food drive at a later time during the month. So there are other opportunities that will be for our stakeholders as people are asking to utilize that to do those types of things. So we're very appreciative to all of those that are serving our stakeholders. As we're thinking in those veins, we were planning for our seniors. We're planning for them to be able to pick up their caps and gowns. We're waiting for their stoles to be returned. We have everything in, but with COVID-19, some things got delayed upon those arrivals, and we're planning for May the 14th, where we will have an opportunity for them to come by and to pick up their graduation cap and gowns and their stoles and some other things that we have for them. So that will be an event for Senior Day that we will have at the high school, and you will be receiving more information on that. That's on a Thursday, I believe. Our tentative graduation date that we would like to look at if things calm down is in June, around the third Thursday, I believe it will be in June. And looking at third Thursday in June, I would like to look at having graduation on a Thursday night, and then possibly doing some shape, form, or fashion of a prom for them on that Friday night. Once they, the young ladies get their face for this term that they use beat for graduation, they would have it beat for prom on Friday night, save the parents a few dollars. Miss Blackshear sure can attest about getting the face beat, I'm sure, with that. So we were thinking that if that could happen, if that's permissible by that time, then that would be our plan to move forward with graduation. And there will be a few modifications with graduation, and with those things, we would get those out later. But we're just kind of trying to unfold some plans as to where we are. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. And I just looked at my calendar, and that looks like June 19th and June 20th for those dates, if it's the third Thursday and third Friday in June. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
It would be the 18th and the 19th.
Okay, 18th and 19th.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. Thursday and Friday, 18th and 19th. Okay, thank you for that. All right, with that being said, we're going to move on to our business agenda. And the first item on our business agenda is an information item, and this is the River's Edge contract information.
Madam Chair, if you would look in your packet, you should have a letter from that would be ending the agreement that we've had with River's Edge agreement, the letter that they have been with us and sharing with us, but we will be ending that agreement on June 30th. They will be moving out of our facility and be relocating. So that would give us, they have been in the back part of our board office. Of course, that area, as you know, our board office is an old facility and is in need of some repairs. We've done a good job of trying to maintain it, but it is very costly. But we've had a good working relationship, and we hate to see them go, but they have made the decision to end the lease, and the current lease ends June 30th. So at this time, this is just information item to let you know that they will be moving on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Thank you for that information. And the next item is also an information item, and that is the CARES Act.
Madam Chair, I'm very pleased to announce that we did receive some additional funds through the CARES Act, and we will be, those funds can be used for technology. Those funds can be used for facility improvements. Those funds can be used in a variety of ways to help us with the COVID-19 devastation, as well as to help us sustain some of the devastation that we will be affected by from COVID-19. My plans right now, or my recommendation will be that we will hold these funds and try and see where are we headed in with this budget year. Where are we going? We won't know the devastation that we will see. There are some things that we will have to do. One of the things was that we could use some of these funds to subsidize some of the pay for that we have to do with some of the people that are working extra and doing some things extra during this time of COVID-19. So we've decided that the people who are working, going out on Mondays and doing some of those extra things, we're going to give them a bonus in June of $500 because they have volunteered to work and to go out during those times. So our bus drivers, those parapros, the lunchroom workers who are doing that from now until June 30th, and they will get a $500 bonus out of those funds. But the remainder of those funds will be used to make sure that we can sustain a full 190-day calendar, hopefully, and be able to get the technology that we need to make sure that if our students ever have to experience anything of this nature, that we're able to make sure that we have the technology needs fulfilled and they're able to have continuous learning.
All right, thank you for that information. Does anyone have any questions?
And you have this information in your packets. And as we will have further discussion concerning those funds, and we received right around, I believe it was about $389,000. We have not received funds. That's what's been allotted, or suggested that we would get, but we have not received those funds as of yet. So I'm of the old school. You don't count those funds until you get them in the bank, and so we won't count that until we have it in our hands.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Yes, yeah. To what Mr. Dixon was saying about the funds, I think my opinion, for this funds, we don't know what, like I said, we don't know what to expect down the road. But my suggestion would be that I would like to see her have a detailed budget to itemize this money. Yes, this money here particularly, to know exactly what we're doing with this, because we need to be real good stewards of this money. As you say, technology that we might need or whatever, and we know we're gonna. This is just an example of what we gonna face. So we need to be prepared. And whatever we use it for, my suggestion would be that it's to be able to sustain us for at least 2 to 5 years. Something that we can see down the road that we accomplish with this, instead of maybe saying personnel money, something like that. I don't agree with that. I agree with using for something like you say that can help the kids and the teachers and the principals down the road with technology and whatever else we may face.
Yes, sir.
And I will piggyback off that, Mr. Rouse, in reference to the $500 for those individuals who are working. You categorize that, Superintendent Dixon, as volunteering their time. It is our understanding, per our conversation 2 board meetings ago, that everyone was still on payroll. So if everyone is still on payroll, what would be the purpose of the bonus for those who, or do they have an option not to come and pass out lunches? So on and so forth. And are there particular people who are allowed to come and help with the disbursement of lunches, or is there a select few that we chose to do this? So if there's a $500 stipend or bonus attached to it, were all of our employees offered the opportunity to come and assist as well?
Mr. Harris, our hourly employees, those that were in those departments, they were given an option to come and work and to volunteer, because at the time that the virus was so rampant and going, we did not want to put any employee at risk. And then we have the liability for them to be able to come back and on us. So we gave those employees that fell in those categories of hourly employees the option to work or not to work.
Mr. Dixon, how many of those employees do you anticipate getting that bonus or that pay?
It came up to be about $8,000 total.
So is that about 16 employees then?
Maybe round about, it was around about $8,000. So when Mr. Austin and I looked at it,
Those 16 that are included, all of those 16 are not hourly employees, or are they?
they are.
So only hourly employees will be allowed to receive the.
They are, yes.
So basically, what piggyback on Mr. Harris, so basically everybody volunteered then.
Though the ones who are working, they did. They had the option. Those that were working, they volunteered to continue to work. They were working, and we said, if you would continue to work, would you not volunteer to continue to work at that particular point in time?
Okay, so like you said, Mr. King and Mr. Jarvis came up to help. You're not going to get them anything?
That was not in the plan. That would be up to the board.
And the only reason I asked that, I'm quite sure, a lot of people would have volunteered to come up for $500. They knew they was going to get $500, So, I mean, that probably wasn't discussed at first. So if it had been discussed, you probably would have way more people than what we could really want,
Well, Mr. Rouse, some of the ones that did not. Some of the hourly ones didn't.
Even if they find out about the 500, they still didn't.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And not to keep going back to this, but I mean, we're going to discuss this, you say, again, before we spend on this money, right? I know we already.
That's the only thing that we took. That's the only thing that we've, and because that was specifically named in as hazard pay that was discussed, that we could use some of it for.
Right. Yeah, I read the brochure and stuff that we could use it for COVID as far as sanitizing and all that kind of stuff too. But I just, I'm just saying we already tapped into that, so we don't want to start tapping. I mean, I understand that it's a certain amount that you could spend without bringing it to the board. But if y'all would, I would suggest with this money here, for it to be spent, it should be budgeted out with the board. This particular.
Yes, sir.
That's just a suggestion from me. I mean, I'm speaking for the way I see that.
And I do agree as well. If we can get a printout of what's being spent, of how much we have, the complete total, and how much are we issuing out to each individual.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions or comments before that? All right, I'm going to move on to item C in our agenda. This is also an information item, Mr. Austin, and this is our FY21 budget calendar update.
All right. Good evening or good afternoon, board chair, vice chair, Superintendent Dixon. All right. So before you is the table of things we have completed as it relates to the budget calendar. But before I actually get into that, in January, we approved the budget calendar, which outlined a detailed plan to craft the budget for the fiscal year. Currently, we have accomplished a lot of things, which I'll later discuss, which is in front of you. However, the most important thing I want to point out is that the State Quality Basic Education, or QBE, has not been allotted or determined for the upcoming fiscal year. Simply put, COVID-19 has delayed the General Assembly for meeting and to approve this. We are anticipating that they will meet in June of this year to actually approve the budget from their end to allow us to see what allocations we would have. So with that uncertainty around the amount of teachers that we're funded for and enrollment, those concrete numbers, we have to amend or move the tentative budget and the approval of the budget in order for us to have a more concrete number to have. In my professional opinion, I believe the economy will see some sharp to moderate declines in some of the funding sources. To be transparent, there has been conversation around the district, as far as in the state, about reducing workforce following a reduced calendar model or freezing scales, some of the things that they've been talking about from the state level. However, this is nothing but speculation from economists on their level. But if it comes across our desk, it is my job to be transparent and let us know kind of what are people thinking so we can brace for those scenarios. In this budget year, the needs of our students should remain top priority until we have some more concrete guidance from the state, but we will remain frugal and preserve our fund balance to overcome any unexpected things down the road. Tentatively, we have to approve it by June 30th. The state has not relaxed on the June 30th date for us what the state law says. So if we was to go beyond June 30th, we have to do a spending resolution, which kind of documents what we're currently doing and when we were spending money. So it is my plans that we continue to work through preliminary numbers, continue to be transparent, and continue to follow the guidance from the state very closely. In that, what you see before you, what we have completed is we presented the budget calendar, which we stated before. The presentation of all the salary schedules have been approved. We've had stakeholder meetings. We've had all our director meetings for the central office and also from the principals and assistant principals and their staff. The budget recommendations have been turned in, and we're in the process of going through those, ranking priority and things of that nature. Definite priority to certain items will be given now due to the delay to the uncertainty of the economy at the moment. And the only thing that I foresee us changing is just moving the presentation of the tentative budget to June and also the legal adoption of the budget to a latter part of June. I know we have scheduled June 9th currently, but moving that into the latter part of June will give us some flexibility. So we may see increased board meetings to get it done. But whatever we need to do for the boys and girls of Twiggs County to ensure that they have the resource they need and we're not put in the bind. So that's the update I have for the budget calendar as it stands now. Any questions or concerns?
It's extremely unfair to expect the individual school systems to have that budget on June 30th when we don't even have our allotment yet. I mean, that's the main part of what our budget is. I guess maybe just break it down to what is absolute necessity and then put on the outskirts what we can do if should the cuts happen, or if we do get more allotment, then we can keep certain things as well. But you can only do what you can do. Is that that's all you can? That you can only do what you can do. Any other questions or comments about that? Okay. All right. I think that's it. Thank you for that update. And hope to have a turnaround soon with our funds and those kinds of things. All right. We're going to move on to the next item, and this is the March finance report. This is an action item.
All right. As this is getting, okay, it's coming up now. So March, we're looking at 86% of the budget has been complete. I'm very excited about this particular part of the year because, you know, we take opportunities to kind of reevaluate some things. And what we have done is looked at closely in the finance office, some reallocation of things between funds, that need to be reclassified. So we've identified those things and we're working through that. And so we should see a lot of the percentages that are over come down in that particular regard. So we've done a great dig in that aspect. Some of that was delayed due to us readjusting to some of the COVID things, but we have put it on our agenda to get that cleared up. But luckily and fortunately, we always maintain the priority of keeping our fund balance afloat. And so we've added this particular month $50,681 to the fund balance. So we continue that trend as has in the past in the first quarter of the calendar year in increasing the fund balance by a month. So as we look into the close of the year, we will probably see by a month it's slowly the amount going down some, nearing zero. But as of right now, with some of the cost savings we expect with some of these unexpected times, we should see a pretty good end to our fiscal year. But as of right now, as it stands, we are adding to the fund balance and we are taking in more money than we're spending out. Are there any questions or concerns about the financial report?
It's always good to be taking in more than we're spending out. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Mr. Dixon, your recommendation, please.
Madam Chair, if there are no more questions, I'll seek approval for the March financial report.
You've heard Mr. Austin's presentation and our superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion from the board and a second to approve the March financial report?
Madam Chair, I make that motion.
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Mr. Rouse to approve our March financial report. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Austin, for that. A little bit of good news there, and we hope that we'll continue to keep on with strong financials as we continue. All right, our next item will be the loan maintenance RFP. This is an action item. Mr. Bacon.
Good evening, Mr. Dixon, Superintendent, Board Chair, and board members, as well as stakeholders. You should have gotten in your packet a copy of the RFP document itself. And what I will briefly do is tell you what exactly is in the RFP. We've revised it somewhat to meet our new requirements, but in the RFP, what we have is just some basic information for any vendors, what the district expects from a vendor, the where exactly they will cut the grass, and the time frame in which to have these things done, as well as penalties for not having them done. So at your leisure, you can go through that document. The document will be posted for our stakeholders to see. Next slide, please. And this is the most important slide, is the timetable in which we will attempt to go through. If approved this evening, we will post it on the website as required by law. We'll mail out invitation to bidders and invitations to bid to vendors. And then we're going to put our bid in RFP in the local newspaper. And then we'll have a vendor walkthrough. And at that walkthrough, you see on the last page of your RFP, the bidder's packet, pre-qualification packet will be due. And in that packet is where we require insurance, licenses, and all of that to make sure that anybody that's putting in a bid qualifies. And as you see, the proposals will be due, and this is, of course, a proposed timeline, will be due on May 25th. And then we will bring, if the board, for the board review of those bids and approval on May 26th. So that's our timeline. And as you can see, our proposal for RFP, and we will solicit as many, try to get as many qualified individuals to bid on this as possible. So with that, that is all. Is there any questions?
Mr. Bacon, what is different from last year? You said there's a few changes. What's the difference?
Basically, we did this about 3 to 4 years ago. What we did is some of the things as far as equipment requirements and also mulching and pine straw. There's some technical things that we changed. Very little. It should be very little, and it shouldn't increase our cost much. Just some time, some things that we didn't. When we had people bid last year, 4 years ago, they asked those questions about some grass cutting heights and zero turn motors and things like that. So we wanted to specify those things out, in which we did. So that way there's definite clarification. So when someone turns in their equipment list, that we verify that, we're being fair to everyone that's putting in a bid. Are there any more questions?
Yes, per some conversations previously as I entered the board, this was one of those items that was a hot topic. And at some point, I think we had some preliminary conversations in our board meeting about how do we work on an opportunity to bring this lawn service or the opportunity for these services to be done in-house. I do know that we lack some equipment and some other mitigating situations that don't allow us to utilize our own equipment as well as our own employees to do lawn service. However, going forward, I think we would like to see, and thank you for a great presentation as always, Mr. Bacon. Going forward, we would love to see this being brought back into our facilities so that our employees have, or maybe the opportunity for new employees to do our lawn service. We do know that our equipment was outdated, and we need to work on a strategic plan at some point to for us to house our own equipment, update that, maintain, as well as allowing the opportunities for our staff and potential new staff to take care of our facilities. As we have 3 to 4 locations, this indeed would help us in some personnel maintain our own. So at some point, we'd love to see. I know that this is not something that we can consider this year, considering the cost and the budget. However, if we could at some point see Mr. Bacon a strategic plan to put in place in order to bring this the lawn service back into our care.
Yes, sir, Mr. Harris. I can definitely work on that. And like you stated before, the thing that getting back into this, if that's the board wishes, would be the capital outlay for equipment. And perhaps that's something you can do in a lump sum if budget allows, or something that we may be able to do over a term of several years to get the equipment back. But I will get with the superintendent and get a timeline of when to bring you back, a tentative timeline of bringing this back and the possible cost in doing so. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon.
Are there any other questions? Okay.
I'm sorry. I muted myself. I thought I unmuted. If there are no further questions, Mr. Dixon, your recommendation, please.
For the RFP,
Yes, sir.
well, it's time for the RFP. There's to go forward. This is the year for the RFP to go forward.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion from the board to approve the RFP as presented for our lawn maintenance?
Madam Chair, I motion that we accept our proposed RFP for the lawn maintenance care.
The motion's been made by Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Ms. Blackshear?
Yes.
Did you say second?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. I second the motion.
I gotcha. All right. So the motion's been made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Ms. Blackshear to approve the RFP for our lawn maintenance. Is there any further discussion? All right.
I have a question for the vote. How long is the contract going to be written for? Since Mr. Harris was talking about maybe getting us a lawn service. We know this one was 4 years, you say. So I'm just saying, how long is the contract? We think.
Okay. The contract is 1 year with 3 years renewable, and it's stated in the RFP. As a state agency, we cannot get in a contractual agreement any longer than 1 year. So it's year to year. But what we do to bring stability to anybody that's working with us, if they have to invest in equipment, it's 1 year, and then it's 3 years renewable based on their performance. So it's really 1 year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Rouse. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the RFP as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that, Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Bacon. And then our last item, let me make sure. Excuse me, we have 2 more items. We have a GADOE, and that's item F. GADOE facilities withdrawal resolution. This is an action item. Mr. Bacon is presenting.
Okay. Once again, board, thank you for the opportunity. Next slide, please. Okay. If you can remember that the board several years ago, 2 years ago, to be a matter of fact, applied for and was granted a capital outlay grant. And it's capital outlay grant 2019. This would be, since Mr. Dixon's tenure, this would be the second of such grants that we've received. And what we're asking, and just to give everybody a heads back up, the Twiggs County School District applied for the capital outlay grant to assist in the acquisition of a new air conditioning system for the Jefferson Elementary School. And the total of the grant that we received was $450,000. And the projected capital outlay for the Jeffersonville air conditioning renovation project and span anywhere from $850,000 to $1.1 million. As you can see, I quoted the estimates from SRJ architectural firm and mechanical engineering firm AP&H, which are our, they do help us with our state facilities estimating for us. And they also served on several projects. So these are the numbers that we received from them. Next slide, please. Well, what happens next? Well, the board approves a resolution of withdrawal of capital outlay 2019. The $450,000 that was allocated for this project goes back into the Twiggs County School System entitlement fund to be used at a future date. So we do not lose this money. So the way this works is every year, based on the state legislature and its approval, appropriation approval, every school district based on FTE receives a certain amount of capital outlay money. So based on the funding level, it can range anywhere for our size from $50,000 to $150,000 a year. To give you an example, when we did the high school HVAC project, which was a $1.75 million project, we had approximately $1.5 million in capital outlay. So basically the district didn't have to come out very much money for that project. I will present to the board a new timeline and project scope at a later date, but we're still planning for implementation during the summer months this summer. So it's just looking at something a little bit different. And we'll look at the next slide, please. Okay, there should be another slide that says capital outlay grant 2000. Why are we asking for this? Okay, there we go. Thank you. This is new to me too. Okay, the district will gain financial flexibility that is not allowable under the terms of the grant. So under the terms of the grant, one of the things that you have to have, see, the grant is a reimbursable grant, meaning that the system will have to have the entire amount of the funds in the bank account when we get ready to start the project. So if the project is 1.1 million, we have to have $1.1 million unencumbered before the start of the project. Now, two, the project can be tailored to the SPLOST collections and payments. So one thing that I try to do with finance and with Mr. Austin, as well as and coordinating with Mr. Dixon, is make sure that, you know, we had a late start with our collections, watch our collections, and make sure that we have the payments of our bonds along with other things in place before we can. So we want to tailor our project to our collections. So that way the fiscal health and all the good news you just got in Mr. Austin's presentation, that can be a continuance, because we don't want to exhaust and then worry about collections, because as we all know, no one knows what the projected collections will be in SPLOST, and we don't want to take that chance as a system. So we're hedging that with making a stronger plan this way. And of course, I think that there are potential cost savings in doing it this way. Two, we will gain project design flexibility that's not allowable under the grant. So under the grant, there's some very specific guidelines that we have to follow. and they're all good. But the designs, I think we can come up with a design option, like a simple replacement of the system that we have with updated equipment. And that would be far less cheaper and expensive for us. And we don't have to have the capital upfront, the upfront capital. And with JES, we can phase in the project at our affordability to match our collections. And so we can strengthen, and then we can capitalize on the things that we've done. For instance, well, during the time that we've been working up to this, we've had to make some really big investments in the JES system. And one of those is this year, we spent approximately $10,000 to get our boiler over there, a RayPack boiler, recertified with a new boiler tray, new orifice, new work, bladder tanks. So we want to be able to say, hey, why buy money? Why spend money on this when we already have it, where the grant doesn't allow for that? Next slide, please. So, so what we're asking for is to be able to have the flexibility to be able to save the district money, to be able to match what we want to do to our collections so we can stay fiscally healthy and meet all our bond obligations. After talking with myself, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Austin, and the state, our state facilities director, Dr. Schumer, we thought it would be best that we ask for a withdrawal to give us this flexibility. And once again, the most important thing is we have a high school roof that's coming up. The money will still be ours to use at another project, and it will grow year to year based on the appropriation of the legislature. So there's a resolution that will need to be signed by Mr. Dixon and the board chair, saying that whereas the Twiggs County Board of Education submitted a capital outlay application, which was funded for project 19LW/73001 Jeffersonville Elementary, whereas the Twiggs County Board of Education has determined that it is fiscally imprudent to undertake the project as designed, whereas the Twiggs County Board of Education wishes to explore alternative situations for the project. Be it resolved that the Twiggs County Board of Education requests that the Georgia Department of Education withdraw Project 19LW Jeffersonville Elementary School and restore funds for future projects approved by the Twiggs County Board of Education, and that would be tonight if the board deems necessary, deems so. Joni Rainey, chairperson, and Elgin Dixon, superintendent, Twiggs County Public Schools. So,
board chair, vice chair, and board members, one of the things upon my arrival in Twiggs, we were struggling with our facilities, and on our strategic plan, we had leaks in our facilities, and our HVAC system was in terrible condition. The HVAC system at JES was in terrible, terrible condition. The boiler was we were one accident away from not cooling or heating or whatever. So that was when we entered into this. I don't know a lot about the X's and the O's, but I do know this was one of the ways that we could possibly address it. When you take the state money, you've got to enter into the agreements with the architects, with the engineers, and they tell you how you're going to do it. So one of the problems that we do have is that Mr. Bacon can talk all this other talk because since he's been with us, he's gone to school and learned that project management talk, so he can talk all that other stuff. But we do not have enough power current to be able to do the whole entire project, which caused that $1.5 million project. we were going to have to do a whole electrical makeover down there, which pushed the project up to the 1.5 million. We don't have that amount of money. But one of the things that I'm not willing to do is to have, upon my tenure, upon my exit of my tenure, to have leaky roofs and to have children hot or cold. So we have to look at what are some ways that we can still get this accomplished. And so that's when we sought out our state facilitator, Mickey Schuber, come in and help us determine. Mr. Bacon came to me with an alternative way, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing it legally and that we were doing it in a way that was going to be prudent. And 10 years from now, someone will say this was a wise decision for the district. So that's how we got where we are. With that, so that's how we ended up where we are. Are there any questions?
Mr. Bacon, can you remind back the dollar amount that we have to have in capital? I'm looking for it in this presentation. The dollar amount that we need.
Yes. If you look the project, if you look on the first slide, it says projected capital outlay for Jeffersonville Elementary air conditioning renovation. It says 850 to 1.1 million.
That's if you do that full.
Right. So that gives you the range of prices that we receive. And no matter what, we would have to have all of that money available before we start. But I think that we have cheaper, more efficient alternatives that I like to that I discussed with Mr. Dixon, and I would like to. I think the board we can be more prudent. And thank you, Mr. Dixon, for mentioning. I spent the last two and a half years in the air conditioning school to be able to be ready, to be able to be more of service on these projects, and not have to take what someone gives us because we don't know. So I like to be able to share that, which is in the next part of it is in the next presentation.
So what I'm understanding is we got $450,000, but the full cost of really going back and doing what the full cost is going to be $850,000 to 1.1 million, and we don't have that much to pay up front. Would we still have the $450,000 to be able to spend on the alternatives?
You could use it. You could use it on the alternatives, or you can use it, save it, and use it on another project. And that's what my recommendation is going to be, that we don't use the capital outlay money for this project. We have some other monies that we can use for this project, and we would save our capital outlay money and use it for the roofing at the middle high school.
Okay, so the most emergent need right now is the roofing at high school. Is that what you're saying?
We're gonna let that bill and use it for that.
How is the air conditioning system right now at the elementary school?
We're still going to address that. We just have some other funds that we can use to address it. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's got to be addressed. Yeah.
Well, I'm in full agreement. We absolutely cannot spend money that we don't have. That's one thing. But we also we have to take care of the needs of our students. So does anybody have any other questions?
I would just like to ask Mr. Bacon, we did have some work that was done on that at the elementary school. How did that go?
Well, ma'am, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. We've had a lot of work done to keep the system going, and those investments, and that's what they were. We made long-term strategic investments that would be discarded under one process. So we fixed the boiler. We put a new control brain into the which the controls were off. So you had to buy what's called a Jace. So we purchased a Jace. So we have a new Jace system that can be utilized. We have a Johnson control backbone that's already in the school. That's still good. All these components that we've bought, we should be able to reap the savings of our prior investments. And that's why this makes it good, because we're part of the requirements that were written were that we're going to use the boiler as backup heat. And because, as Mr. Dixon mentioned, we have it, it's not a power problem. It's just with certain systems, like a barge system, like you see on schools, they hang on the outside of schools. Well, they have electric heat strips, and those heat strips are the secondary heat, which use a lot of power. So if you put in something like that, then you have to have a lot more power than the building was initially designed for, as opposed to looking at the other option. So we want to make sure that the things that we've been paying for over the years, to make sure the students were somewhat comfortable, we can reap the benefits of those and not have to do that again.
And when we built the new gym, that's when we bought the brain, right?
Yes, sir. So just thinking future, we knew the brain was, the control head was not good at the front of the building. So we made the investment when we did that several years ago. So we've kind of been planning these things. They're not, 3 and 5 and 6 years out, so that we'll be able to make these kinds of decisions now. So I think we're in a good space with some of the things that we've already done to make sure that, we are able to keep afloat. And like I said, we didn't just do the boiler. We had the boiler recertified by the state. We made sure that all of these repairs, we didn't let Uncle Bud come in. We did a good job making sure that we made investments, and investments are for the long term. So I feel good about some of the things that we've done, Ms. Blackshear, in the last couple of years to keep the thing going.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions? This item is an action item, and Mr. Dixon, please give us your recommendation for this resolution, please.
My recommendation would be to withdraw our present facilities plan that we have at the state at Godot, and move forward with that.
Okay. You've heard Mr. Bacon's presentation and our superintendent's recommendation. You see the resolution to withdraw in your yellow packet. Is there a motion to approve this resolution as presented?
Madam Chair, I make that motion to approve that resolution.
I second the motion.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mr. Rouse and seconded by Ms. Blackshear to approve the resolution to withdraw as is. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that. And then we have one more item on our business agenda. That's item G, and that's Jeffersonville Elementary School HVAC information. I know you touched on it, Mr. Bacon. Do you have any other words to give us?
Yes, ma'am. Next slide. So what we've done working in with some of our partners, and what I mean by partners, we have long-term relationships with people that we deal with as far as HVAC, Hamlin, Metro Air, as well as I'm a member of the state facilities, the state school facility coordinators. So what we did first is do a proof of concept. And as you can see, we didn't just say, whatever. We went away and tried to come up with a way that was what was best for us. And we wanted to come up with, look at different systems, different concepts that are out there, and find the one that best fit this district, our district and our school. So a proof of concept, just kind of give you a background, is the proof of a concept in phases. We wanted to look at these 3 phases: the proof of concept phase, where we look at concepts and decided which one is best. Then we do the prototype and design phase, and that's kind of where we are right now. Installation of the prototype, and then full product installation. One thing I learned, and I mentioned this to Mr. Dixon, is in the high school installation, they come in, they put in a big system, and then we are left working out the kinks. And it's a little bit different now because then I didn't have as much knowledge or education, and even the staff has gone back. Mr. Broderick has gone back to workshops to do this. So we'll be able to phase something in, test and balance it, make sure it's right, work out the kinks, and save money on the next installation as we phasing this in. Next slide, please. What is a proof of concept? A proof of concept is just when we look and focus on over a 2-year period, looking at different designs, and we develop what's most feasible for us, and then we verify that using against several factors. The first factor is available resources. What do we already own? What's already working? 2, the timetable. When do we need to do this and how soon? Because the faster the timetable, the more money. If we can wait, find better deals, that all works in our favor. 3, financial risk. When we're out spending money, what is the risk? And also, financial risk is using unproven technology. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And secondly, developing a proof of concept requires investment of time and resources. So this is not something we just got into. We've been looking at what's best for JES when we first started looking at what we needed to do. Next slide, please. So this will kind of give you a framework to work around. What's at JES currently? JES is on what we call, it's a split system. It has a straight cool condenser on the outside, and we have 2 types at the school. We have a Linux and we have Carrier. All of those are 15-ton units, and they're approximately 20 years old. Some of them are good and pretty good working condition, and some of those are in good working conditions because we've invested in compressors and things over time. And then for supplemental for heat, we use a Raypack boiler, natural gas boiler. And as you see the picture in the middle, we use air handlers with condensing coil water, condensing coils. So that's kind of what we already have there right now. So next slide, please. So what do we want? What are we looking at putting in there? Well, the first thing is, let's talk about what we're not going to put in there. Well, there's a system called VPN, variable refrigerant. That's the newest thing. Everybody wants to sell us that. Every engineer wanted to sell us that. And I asked the same question. How many variable refrigerant systems are in schools in Middle Georgia? None. Where are the technicians to fix refrigerators units? They're in Atlanta. Why would you want to sell? And see, in the past, we would have accepted that because we didn't know. We want solid state technology, proven technology. We don't want to be anybody's guinea pig. We want to, and then we want to have an understanding of what we're putting in, as well as that the area around us has the technicians to work on what it is that we're putting in. So the new system we would like to propose will be a 15-ton heat pump. And as you know, a heat pump heats and cool with the same unit to a certain point. So it can cool all the way down, but it only heats to a certain point. So we're trying to get a high SEER train unit, which means that we'll be able to heat the building to 70 degrees without using natural gas when the temperature outside is 34 degrees. So that's very important. Those of you who have heat pumps at home understand that when that light comes on and it's burning gas or electricity. So we're looking to be able to utilize a heat pump, which is much more efficient, and then at a secondary auxiliary, our gas unit. Next slide. So as you look here, and I won't go through all of these are the kind of requirements that we spec'd out for our renovation. Now, one of our closest vendors, I spec'd out and told him we're going to use our boiler. Why did he spec me out a unit that would use electricity as secondary heat? So we got to go through these. These are the specific things that we needed. Some things are already good. We had several people look at our ductwork over there. It's good. We just need some diffusers and some pieces, so we don't have to do a total rip out like was proposed. Our ductwork has been inspected. We will have it cleaned by a professional cleaning company that does that, and they pressurize it and clean it. But why would we rip out all of the ceiling tile and all of that if we didn't have to? So it's doing these checks and making sure that these are the specs that we wrote for the system that we want, using the things that we already own. So you can look through those. So next slide. So when we were projecting earlier in the earlier presentation, we were looking at putting in a system from anywhere from 800,000 to 1.1 million. Well, to do this renovation, we're looking anywhere from, and these are the three main the halls and the student, we're looking anywhere from $390,000 to $450,000. That's before, and I will come back with the superintendent's permission and bring you the hard numbers, but these are the numbers that we have thus far of putting in the system, 390,000 to 450,000, and that's including controls, which is one of the big things that we really need to work on. And that's why you have that varying heat distribution throughout the building. It's hot in this room, it's cold in that room. So we got to put in better controls. So this is where we're looking at, and I'm gonna give a take, but I'll have harder numbers. But this is the ballpark that we're looking at, which is substantially different than what you saw earlier that we were looking at. And then we can phase this in. We would phase in 2 wings with your permission, coming back and looking at the bids and things like that at the end of May, and be completed by mid-July. So we would phase in these wings and see how that goes. But the first thing that we would do, we would put in one system, test and balance that system, know that that system works for us, and be able to cut costs in the next installation as we go down. So this is what I have. And like I said, we will have more definite numbers once all of the preliminary bids. We've had some project engineers and folks come in to write up bids and to go through the ceilings to make sure we have these hard numbers. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon, for bringing that before time. So we can expect an action item at the next meet. I mean, when is the expectation for us to have to vote on for this to be an action item? What's the turnaround time for this?
I'm hoping to have hard numbers to the superintendent by next week, and then he'll let me know when to bring that to you. But the thing about this equipment is, the good news is the lead time for the equipment is 10 days. So it's not some fancy equipment that's coming from Germany. Those of you who don't know, our boiler from the high school comes from Germany. So it's something that's sourced in Atlanta. We're 10 days away. So, we can move pretty rapidly based on installators' schedule, but the equipment can be on the ground fairly quickly.
And can either Mr. Dixon or Mr. Beckett, because you talk about where the funding source for this is going to come from?
We will use some of our SPOS dollars to fund this.
Okay, and that will be the only, so you wouldn't have to get any more money from anywhere else?
Some of our SPOS dollars, and we possibly would use some of our fund balance.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you bringing that beforehand, so it gives us something to think about for next time, for our next meeting, or whenever it comes up again in the future, that we will know to be thinking about this. So I appreciate that. Does anybody have any other questions? This was not an action item. This was just information item tonight.
But when we bring it back, we will bring back the funding source as well.
Okay.
In the where it's coming.
Okay.
The most of it is that is from our SPOS.
Okay. I don't see anyone else with any other questions. So thank you for that presentation, Mr. Bacon. And that concludes our business agenda for this evening. And at this time, I entertain a motion to move into executive session for personnel and classified staff recommendations.
Madam Chair, I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Mr. Rouse and Ms. Fletcher, but Mr. Rouse heard him first. And so anyway, all in favor for moving into executive session, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you. for that countdown, Ms. Stokes. All right, so I entertain a motion to move into regular session from executive session.
And I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Ms. Stokes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Regarding our superintendent's recommendations for personnel, is there a motion regarding CID 4380?
What was that CID number again?
4380 teacher JES.
I move that motion.
You made the motion, Ms. Blackshear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there seconded? The motion's been made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Mr. Rouse to approve the hiring of CID 4380 teacher JES. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. And in our resignations, renewals, and rescindments, is there a motion regarding EID 3202?
I make that motion.
The motion's been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Blackshear. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. And the next will be EID 428. Is there a motion to approve our superintendent's recommendation for 428? No motion for an EID 428?
I move that motion.
The motion's been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stokes. All in favor, please raise your hands. That's 3 for those against. Please raise your hand. Those opposed. That motion, and I vote yes for that. I vote to accept that. That motion carries 3-2. All right. Is there a motion to approve the rescindment? Or do you have a motion regarding EID 430? 430.
Madam Chair, I'd like the motion to rescind the motion for 430.
Okay. And is that in the form of a non-renewal to rescind the non-renewal, Ms. Blackshear?
This is to rescind a non-renewal for 430.
Okay, Ms. Blackshear's made the motion to rescind the non-renewal for EID 430. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Mr. Harris has seconded the motion. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. And is there another motion regarding EID 430?
Madam Chair, I accept the resignation of IED 430.
All right. The motion's been made by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
And
And
this was recommended. This was recommended by the superintendent, correct?
yes, ma'am. That was our superintendent's recommendation. Yes, yes, ma'am. All right, and then our next one will be our classified staff recommendations as recommended by our superintendent. Is there a motion regarding our classified staff recommendations for FY 2021?
Madam Chair, I motion that we accept all classified staff recommendations presented by our superintendent.
Okay, the motion's been made by Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Harris has made the recommendation, made the motion to accept the classified recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been seconded by Ms. Stokes. All in favor, please raise your hand. It's 3-4. Those against? 1 against, and that's going to be 4 and 1 against. That motion carries. All right, that concludes what we discussed in our executive session. And now I'm entertaining a motion to adjourn.
And I will make that motion.
Made by Ms. Stokes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. That's my gavel. I missed my little gavel. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for a wonderful meeting. Thank you. That's great.